This is Steve Zeltzer with Pacifica. The attack on workers and the health and safety of workers around the country is growing as the pandemic and epidemic spreads. One of the workers who has spoken out around this issue is Carlos Gabriel, who's a Tesla worker in Fremont, California. And he has led the campaign for proper health and safety at the plant at Tesla and has also been retaliated against for speaking out. Welcome to Pacifica, Carlos.
Hey, Steve. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
So, Carlos, why don't you talk about your effort to protect the health and safety? And when the pandemic started, you were fearful of going back to work and have been off work since. What was your story about your struggle to protect your health and safety and the health and safety of other workers and their families and the community?
So, as you know, Tesla has been super apprehensive about this pandemic and virus. Going back even before it hit the U.S., Elon Musk calling it dumb, or the worry about it dumb, even though, the hundreds of thousands of people are dying from this disease. Initially they refused to close. They deemed themselves critical infrastructure. And even though the county in which, Alameda County, in which the factory is at, had a shelter in place, Tesla refused to close down or shut down their doors for at least another week to a week and a half. And then they shut down for 2 weeks and attempted at, reopening right away. But it was shut down by, again, I feel it was a lot of the workers, community members that pressure the health officials and the sheriff department. And as you know, towards the beginning of May, Elon Musk defied the sheltering order and threatened the Alameda officials to arrest him, putting, again, thousands of workers at risk. And when we talk about the thousands of workers, a lot of the reports that I see says about 10,000 workers, but I can tell you that since my start at Tesla, they've always been adamant about 13,000 to 15,000 workers. That's the information that they always share with us verbally and in our meetings. So, these are a massive amount of workers. It's basically a small town if you think about it. And, these folks are coming from all over the state, all the way down from Santa Cruz to Fresno County. So, these outbreaks that are happening now are definitely a big worry for myself and others, and it should worry the community and other workers. Most recently, we saw a post by the Washington Post a few weeks ago that en masse what's really happening, or some of the things that are happening at Tesla. What that means is that, there have been outbreaks. As soon as early May, there have been outbreaks at Tesla that they were not reporting. And just to go back a little bit, when they first opened, again, Elon Musk opened without waiting for the shelter in place to be lifted. And he, I guess, Tesla showed a reopening plan to the health officials in Alameda County, but he also threatened to leave. So I think there was a little bit of coercion that occurred for the factory to open. And instead of the Alameda County health officials keeping tabs or keeping, I want to say, a short leash on Tesla officials, the Tesla leadership, they kind of just washed their hands and put the Fremont PD, out of all people, right, in charge of the health and safety. Because recently, we heard that at least one inspector from Cal-OSHA has been to the plant, but not necessarily with regards to COVID-19, but with regards to their usual operation of health and safety. So after that Washington Post article, myself and you, Steve, we had a press conference and rally at one of many in front of the factory, and asking for these folks to be held accountable, for Tesla to be transparent. They are doing their own contact tracing, and what they shared with us employees was that any and all COVID-19 cases at the factory. Now they admitted there are COVID-19 cases at the factory, but now they're saying that they all were transmitted outside of the factory without any real explanation of how they came to that conclusion, which is an impossible conclusion to make in the first place. All they're really doing for workers is, taking their temperatures via a sensor or a sensor-equipped camera as they enter, nothing as they leave. And there has been no history of sanitation at this factory, not before the reopening, not after even disinfections. There's been no history, from what I understand, of any sanitation or any shutdown. We're requiring folks, or we're demanding the folks shut down for at least 24 hours and have an intensive sanitation for those 24 hours so the workers can go back to work. They're not doing that. There's no record of them doing that. The only thing we know is that they're doing their own contact tracing and they're watching their own bags and covering their own bags and putting these cases and throwing these cases under the rug. I just spoke to one of my colleagues this morning that he happened to have gone back to work for the initial 3 weeks, but then was sent home because there was a case in his department, and he has refused to return. They asked him to return again. He has refused to return as well because now he feels that he got a sense of it can happen to him. He can be infected and be either ill, die, or have long-term effects. And I asked him how he was treated by Tesla. They said they did nothing. They offered me nothing. They said just collect unemployment. That's all they really said. No hazard pay, no post-contact support, none of that. Just, they contact you after whatever days and say, can you come back to work? That's all they really care for. So definitely the health and safety of workers is not in the forefront of Tesla's mind. And, we just have, as workers, we have agencies, health officials in Alameda County and beyond, Cal-OSHA and Governor Newsom that we pay to keep us safe, and they're not doing their jobs, and we need to do something about it. And with that being said, we are having a press conference and rally this upcoming Thursday at noon at the Alameda County Public Health Office at 1000 Broadway in Oakland, for anyone that wants to join here in Oakland or in Alameda County. And that's to, now to put the pressure on these health officials that, they're colluding with Elon Musk and other factories and even field owners at putting the health of workers at risk and keeping workers in the dark with all these cases. We saw a case that happened, or a big infection that happened in McDonald's on Telegraph in Oakland, and they're shutting down. So that's what we want to see. We want to see folks shut down and put sanitation practices in place, and they go back with a much more robust. If they must go back with a much more robust plan to reopen.
And we're talking with Carlos Gabriel. He's a Tesla worker who's been organizing the fight to protect health and safety of Tesla workers and all workers for that matter. And Carlos, what is the composition of the workforce, the frontline workers, the factory workers at Tesla? Because apparently the white-collar workers, who are mostly white, have been able to work outside the factory, and the other workers are stuck on the front lines.
Yeah, Steve. As always, and I guess I can speak historically, right? Whenever there's a new, specifically with transportation, has always been problematic. Whenever there has been a new innovation in transportation, has always been, the black and brown and API Asian folks that have really laid the ground and done all the work while risking their own health at very, very low pay. And it's not very different with Tesla. And I'd also, the very, very poor whites. So for the most part at Tesla, with these 13 to 15,000 employees, is, black, Latino, Latinx, and Asian folks that are working, and very poor white, such as my friend Brenton Phillips, who has been very vocal about the mistreatment of workers at Tesla with regards to the COVID-19 and beyond. The demographics of Tesla, it's no different than what we've seen in the transportation eras of the past. We're building again a brand new innovation in transportation on the back of black, brown, APR, and poor workers with very little pay. Labor. It's as near as you can get to labor wages and slave labor wages and circumstances, right?
And the work conditions, besides obviously the fear and terror that some workers have, because of Musk's feeling that it's not serious, this virus. A lot of workers apparently at the factory don't wear masks. They don't do proper distancing, and that threatens the other workers at the plant. Is that a fear that those workers who have immune deficiencies or their family have, that they would be contaminated because of a lack of concern of other employees encouraged by Elon Musk?
Yeah, definitely. Steve, I think even beyond that, right? So, folks, obviously we understand that some people don't believe in this virus. And, in a factory of 15,000 people, you better believe we have some of those folks that refuse to wear their mask. Some of them don't wear the mask because, it's also a hard place to work for, right? So you're standing on your feet. A lot of times you're under a vehicle, under equipment, where temperatures are not the best. There is no real AC unit at the factory, and the temperatures are rising, and folks are feeling very uncomfortable wearing all this equipment. Which is problematic in a lot of ways, specifically because they're not being penalized for not wearing their PPE properly. There's also an issue with, several times speaking with several employees or co-workers of mine, there has been issues with discarding the PPE. People are not, they just run it anywhere and everywhere. Again, people are afraid to eat lunch together, sit in the break rooms in the common areas, use the bathroom facilities, because there has been no real sanitation happening at Tesla. A few other things that just came to my attention not too long ago is that, for example, today was a big issue because they are working on a Saturday today, right? And it's customary that, before COVID-19, your supervisor will bring in donuts. Well, that's happening now, too. There were some complaints by some of my coworkers shared with me of, the supervisors brought in donuts today. And now people are congregating to grab that donut, touching the same box. It's just problematic in general. This past Friday, there was another complaint by the same worker. I guess they celebrated a birthday. So they congregated to celebrate a birthday on the break room. So this is it's problematic. Things are not being done as they said they will be doing it. Their plan, even though it's not the best plan, when it includes, to not listen to the news, because that's also a way to contract the virus or to get anxious or anxiety or stress about the virus. But no, they're not following their plan, their own plan. So there's no one that really holds them accountable, and we need to put the pressure as workers on these politicians and the health officials.
And Elon Musk has said, or the management of the company, don't listen to the news, don't pay attention to what's happening outside. Do you think this is creating a bubble of workers there who are ignoring the fact that the pandemic now is peaking again in California and expanding?
Definitely, and I would say even, just to go back even pre-COVID-19, Tesla was already a bubble. Tesla was already, this cultish light factory that it's riddled with worship culture. They worship Elon Musk. And also, workers are coerced to giving up their rights or put in a place where they're fearful of, going to the press or sharing their story, or even using their rights as whistleblowers when their rights are being trampled on. So, yeah, Tesla has always been a bubble and have always maintained the attitude that, nothing gets out, nothing gets in, right?
And Governor Newsom has not really properly funded Cal-OSHA. There are less than 200 inspectors for 19 million workers. As you said, there has not been an oversight of Cal-OSHA of COVID safety, health and safety at the plant. Why isn't Governor Newsom responding to the needs of the workers at Tesla and other workers at meatpacking plants? It seems like, although he's a Democrat, he seems to be carrying out the same operations as Trump, even though he says he's different than Trump as far as protecting workers in California. I
mean, I couldn't tell you what's on his mind, other than, he has a very capitalistic mind where, with regards to Tesla, initially I felt like, Governor Newsom was on our side, him and other health officials, because they did listen to the workers in the community about shutting down the state and Tesla, right? But then all of a sudden they get a threat and a lawsuit by Elon Musk, and now they're running high. They're running high. With regards to Cal-OSHA, my understanding is that, there has been, for years, there has been more than a 52% or 50% lack of inspectors. So there has been a lot of vacancies, so 50% vacancies at Cal-OSHA, which, it's concerning to me as a worker and as a California resident, that the organization and institution that's in charge of our health and safety, the health and safety of about 20 million people in California, is underemployed and has this many vacancies, 52% vacancies in the whole state of California. It seems to me that they're functioning at the same capacity or with the same tactics that the Trump federal OSHA is functioning, and it's unacceptable. It's extremely unacceptable.
And you're going to have a rally at the Department of Public Health in Alameda County on July the 2nd. What can people do in California to make sure that the health and safety of workers are protected so that they don't infect themselves and their families and communities when they go back after work?
I would say, reach out first to Governor Newsom as much as possible, and to your supervisors and to your health departments in your own communities. But also, also have rallies. Have rallies at different government agencies, at different factories that for sure, like Amazon in Tracy, that we know for sure has had, COVID-19, I think even deaths, right, coming from that factory. So, just support your workers and hold your officials accountable, hold these factories accountable. The first thing is by contacting them via email, via phone, and just bombarding their means of communication so that they understand that this is an issue for everyone. Because I don't think it's just workers that are being affected by this. No, if one of the workers at Tesla, for example, or several of the workers at Tesla are infected with COVID-19, that can spread, again, as I said, from Santa Cruz all the way to Fresno County. That's a lot of counties in between. So it's affecting everyone. So I would say, put the pressure on your supervisors, put the pressure on your mayor, on all political types, put the pressure on, especially on those that are in charge of public health.
Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us. We've been talking with Carlos Gabriel. He's a Tesla worker. And this is Steve Zelsa with Pacifica. So thanks for joining us on the show, Carlos.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Pacifica. Thank you, the audience, for listening, and hope we stay in touch.